lovelies, how are we doing? Welcome back to my channel, Boomy Reactions. I am Boomy. Thank you for watching. Now today, we have a treat. We have a foodie video and a history video. It's my favourite of both worlds. It's my favourite crossover of two of my favourite subjects. So this video has been requested by the wonderful Skip, my friend Skip, through Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you so much, my lovely. So Skip, you say this one is a little bit different. This channel is called History Extra and the presenter is Ruth Goodman. Her name rings a bell and I can't think why. Oh, Ruth reminds me of one of my favourite high school teachers. She had the same hairdo and looked like she dresses in a robe. But when she spoke, she made the topics very interesting. You know, when you have a teacher that can sell any subject and teach any subject in the most interesting and passionate way, that is an excellent teacher, isn't it, Skip? I don't know about you guys. We don't have enough of them. We need more of these passionate teachers because then we love the subject, don't we? Like I've always had amazing history teachers. So anyway, the topic of this video is what the Tudors really ate and why it was healthier than you think. Oh, one of my favourite topics in history is the Tudors. With your love of history, I'm sure you already know about the Tudors and their culinary pursuits. A little. It was all new to me, and I think it will be of interest to your non-British subscribers. Well, I hope so, guys. Let's have a watch and see, shall we? I know I will be interested in your added information about the subject. And thank you so much for that lovely message there, Skip. Thank you, my friend. Okay. So yes, I do. I'm very, very interested in the Tudors. Did anyone catch the TV series? It's a bit old now. It's a bit raunchy. I did like that one as well. Yes, it's a very unique period in British history. You all may have, you know, when we talk about the Tudor time period, you probably think of Henry VIII. The round, red-headed, vain king that had 6 wives, and he wasn't very nice to those 6 wives, was he, guys? So he's probably the most well-known Tudor, and of course we've got Elizabeth, the greatest, I would say, the greatest of all of the Tudor monarchs. But their diet, okay, so when we talk about the Tudor point in time, we're thinking of the 1400s, 1500s. Elizabeth was the last Tudor monarch, and she died really early in the 1600s. So a few hundred years there. So you can imagine that point in time, there was a huge difference. I'm sure I don't need to explain this to an awful lot of you, but just to summarize, just to recap, there is a huge difference between what you would be eating in any given day to day based on your social status. So if you were part of the elite, part of the nobility, the aristocracy, you probably would have eaten an awful lot of meat, an abundance of meat actually. It's probably responsible for what we associate with a very gouty kind of diet, although I'm pretty sure that's been debunked. But yes, high in fats, a lot of meat, a lot of game, a lot of different birds. Henry VIII is famous for preparing swans. Yes, he liked to eat swans because it's this big lavish display of wealth. You know, you often find, or you did often find with the nobility, around this time era, it was considered a display, very much a display of wealth to eat a lot, especially meats, preserved fruits. So I think there were fruits available. They, more often than not, they were preserved. You know, kind of makes sense. They're not going to keep for very long, are they, in Tudor England? Let me think. So if you were a peasant, if you were one of the working classes in Tudor England, your diet would have been very limited to something, is it a pottage? Like some kind of porridge, very thinned down, vegetable, brothy kind of water, sometimes thickened with oats or maybe pearl barley. Not terribly nutritious. Meat was rare. It was a luxury. Some like darker rye loaves, bread. I'm just trying to think if I've missed anything out. Anyway, I've done an awful lot of talking. I'm sure they're going to recap and go over this in the video. So let's crack on, shall we, guys? I have an awful habit of talking so much before we even started playing the video. Anyway, if you're enjoying these reactions, my lovelies, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. If you're interested, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link is over here. And should you be interested in supporting my channel any further, I have a Patreon account. If you want to check that out, the link is in the description below.
The beginnings of a major change are happening here.
I know
and
I
it's going
recognise
to
her
reach
name.
out and change the British diet forever.
Immediately pausing this video. I know, sorry guys. I know why I recognise her name, Skip. I recognise her face. So Ruth Goodman has done over her the span of her career, her lifetime. She's done an awful lot of work with the BBC. I've watched so many BBC historical documentaries and programmes where Ruth has been part of it or been the narrator or the presenter one way or another. So that's why I recognise her name. Yes, I recognise her face now. Yes, she does an awful lot. I'm thinking she did like a mini series called, it was like On the Farm, on the Tudor farm, on the Victorian farm, on the wartime farm. They were very, very interesting. And she's done lots of little bits over the years. She's a historian, obviously. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Ruth Goodman, and we're going to be talking today about Tudor food and drink.
So she looked like one of your one of your teachers. Skip.
From rich stews and fresh baked bread to preserved meats and pottage, Tudor food was shaped by the seasons and by social status. We'll find out what a typical day's diet looked like, from breakfast through to supper, and we'll discover why Tudor food wasn't quite as unhealthy as you might first assume.
So they were a bit limited as to what was in season as well. No exporting or importing of food. The importing of spices rather, became a little bit more thing, or a bit more of a thing, like cinnamon, ginger, cloves. But generally, your lower classes wouldn't have had any access to it because it would have been very, very expensive. And with the discovery of the New World, the Americas, we were first introduced to the potato and the tomato. But again, it wouldn't be available for quite a while, and it wouldn't be available to your average working class person, more so to the richer classes. And 2 meals a day, I think.
Probably the most important food for any Tudor was bread. But by bread, we often mean quite a range of things. Now, obviously, we'd expect there to be a loaf of bread, such as you might buy from an artisanal bake shop these days. And if you look here in our Tudor kitchen, you can see the oven where it was baked.
Ooh.
But it didn't just mean that. The word bread covered quite a range of different styles of thing. And if you're in North Wales, such as we are today, many people were eating not that sort of baked in an oven bread, but rather oatcakes, as you can see up on this creel up here. So these are drying in front of the fire. They're cooked on a griddle. If you can't afford an oven, and if your grain is oat rather than wheat, because the weather here doesn't always ripen the wheat, you'll find the same in many upland areas of Britain, then oats are better done as a flat cake rather than trying to turn them into a traditional bread. They don't make very good bread. And of course, not everybody's got an oven. So if you are in one of these upland areas, in Wales, Scotland, the Pennines, wherever it might be, cooking on an open fire and having to manage with oats as your main grain, oat cakes were the solution. You make a sort of like porridge, and then you sort of spread it out on a flat bake stone. So once you've had them on your bake stone and you've done them on both sides, then you stand them up in some sort of frame to dry out. And in that way, you can keep them and keep them and keep them. It's one of the great advantages of oat cakes. They keep so well, they don't go stale like a loaf of bread does. In some areas, you get a sort of mix, part loaf of bread, part oat cake, things like bannocks, jannocks in another area of the country. It's quite a varied tradition of different sorts of breads, different sorts of oat cakes, different sorts of barley bread, rye bread, all mixed together. And every region had its own specialities. There wasn't one standard bread across Britain. But it was a thing that most people ate most often. For many people, it was their main food, breakfast, dinner, and supper. But even for the very wealthy, it formed the basis upon which everything else built. This is a time, remember, before potatoes, before there was widespread rice, before there was pasta. The carbohydrates that people ate were almost exclusively coming from grain in the form of one type of bread or another. So bread is deeply important to people, but it's not the only other food. The next most important food for most of us was something called pottage, which just means cooked in a pot. It's enormously varied, even more than the bread. Super seasonal. So what I might cook today would be completely different from what I'd be cooking in a fortnight's time as different ingredients come to the fore. And you might think to yourself, yeah, I know about plants changing through the season, but it's not just the plants. In Tudor times, meat, fish, and eggs, and cheese, and butter all had a season of their own. So, for example, take the milk. Nowadays, we have milk all the way round the year, but that is not the Tudor pattern. Cows went dry in the winter when there wasn't much food available for them, and you then have to wait until they'd had a calf before they came into milk again. So the milk season ran from March, round about then, through to about October. And even within that, there are subtleties. So that first flush of milk, when the grass is first springing up and is lush and green, well, that milk is very high in fat, which makes it extremely good for butter making. So butter is a sort of spring and early summer thing.
I had no idea about that. Obviously, living in this day and age, you just take it for granted, don't you? You don't, we have milk all year round and we never really question why, but really, considering where it comes from and how we obtain the milk, it should tie in with birthing, calving season, shouldn't it really? That just makes life even harder. How miserable would your meals be every day, every week, with such limited carbohydrates? I'm a big carbohydrate person. I love bread, pasta, rice, potatoes. And the Tudor diet rules out, 4 out of 5 of those? You only have, you've got grain, which you can make into some form of bread. It's a bit miserable, isn't it?
Unless you salt it, so it tastes different later in the year. Fresh butter in the spring, salted butter later on. However, as the grass changes, as the weather moves on through the seasons, the nutrition that the cows are getting begins to shift. So whilst that early flush of grass made very fatty milk, very creamy milk, later in the summer, the milk contains more caseins, and that makes it perfect for cheese making. So early spring, you'd make lots of butter, and then you'd only start to make your cheese once the spring really got going. So maybe not till June, and then you'd cheese make through the rest of the year. So there are seasons to your dairy produce. Same with your eggs. The chickens don't lay when there's low light levels. They're sparked into laying by the pituitary gland, which notices how much daylight there is. Now, in a modern world, we put them in sheds and we give them artificial light so that they'll lay all the year round. But that's not possible in Tudor England. In Tudor England, eggs are seasonal too. They start when the sun is high enough in the sky and the day length is long enough, and it stops as the nights draw in.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine in whatever world, in whatever circumstance, meeting someone from the Tudor time era, and however you've got round to this scenario of them coming round to dinner or whatever, and offering them an egg, and them just looking at you like you're a witch. How have you got eggs? It's winter. How? What do you mean? How have you obtained these? And just looking at them blankly like, I don't know what you mean. It's so odd, isn't it? Oh,
So
funny.
again, eggs are seasonal. So too are our meats.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it doesn't make sense to kill a cow if she's in calf. You would wait till a different part of the year would be sensible to slaughter your animals. And there's a sort of rhythm through the year of which animals you take when, according to what sort of foods they're eating and how you're managing them. So Easter, for example, was the time for lamb. If you had a spare lamb or one that wasn't looking too good and you decided that one's going to go, that's the moment you would eat it. The only time of the year you'd eat a lamb. Easter, something special.
Yeah. So I've never really, I'm pretty aware actually. We eat lamb on Easter Sunday. It's just a tradition. We've always had a roasted leg of lamb for as long as I can remember. And that is a very kind of ancient origin of why we eat lamb at Easter. What do you guys eat at Easter time on your Easter Sunday or Good Friday? What do you do? Is it similar to us? Let me know in the comments.
For the rest of the year, you'd wait then, not eat any sheep at all, until they'd been sheared. And after they've been sheared and you've made the money off their wool, then the oldest ewes, who you don't think will have good wool next year,
The mutton.
that's when you eat them as mutton. And you can see that this pattern follows everything. Fishes in the sea, just the same. Different shoals come through at different times of the year. So there is an ebb and a flow to which things are turning up in fishermen's nets. And yes, you can preserve things. Salt cod, pickled herring, smoked kippers. These are things that can be had all year round, but people tend to use them when there's not much fresh. So they tend to get eaten in the late winter in particular, or Lent when you're not allowed to eat meat. So there's a huge seasonality. No 2 weeks of the Tudor diet are the same. Meat, fish, eggs, cheese, butter, all of it, as well as the vegetables and the fruit, have a season. So when I'm deciding on my pottage, the list of ingredients that I've got to me is very specific to this week of the year.
So already I'm starting to think, well, we would normally assume that, you know, a Tudor peasant's diet would have been very, very bland and repetitive, and because there's not much choice available to them for financial reasons. But really, that's not true at all, is it? So they've actually got quite a varied diet. So it's almost like on a bit of a cycle. That can't be bad. That's got to be quite good for you. I'm sure there's other things about the Tudor lifestyle that is not particularly healthy, but actually, I think their diet is more varied than I thought it was actually.
And next week's selection of ingredients will be completely different, so my pottage will change. The word stays the same. We say, oh, we're eating bread and pottage. But every single week throughout the year, that pottage is going to be completely different. Sometimes it's going to be full of a fish, sometimes of one meat, sometimes another meat, sometimes this vegetable, sometimes that. It's always changing. And the range of herbs and vegetables that the Tudors grew in their garden was wide.
Yeah.
Most people are unable to go to a vegetable shop. There weren't really vegetable shops. You could buy meat at market, you could buy all sorts of things at market, but there weren't really much market gardening in a commercial way. You were reliant on your own garden generally for your fruit and veg.
Or foraging.
And people therefore have to think about, well, I need to eat this week, I need to eat next week, I need to eat the week after. It's no point having a bumper crop of carrots if they all come at once.
Yeah.
They're going to go off. And meanwhile, you've had nothing while you're waiting for that bumper crop. Better to have a garden that has a huge variety, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of the other, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, that will all ripen and be ready for picking at different moments, so that at any week in the year, there's always a bit of something. to go in your pottage to flavour it in yet another different combination. So weirdly, although it sounds super boring, most people are living on bread and pottage, weirdly, the Tudor diet is actually quite varied.
Yeah. I am surprised by that. They had a lot of herbs that we wouldn't recognise as well.
Is a moment of enormous change in the kitchen. We are going to utterly change the way we cook, the fuel that we cook on, the equipment that we use, and ultimately the food that we produce. So this is an odd fireplace at a moment caught in the middle of change. It's neither one thing nor the other, but a strange mashup of two systems. So the older system, the more established system, and to be fair, for most of the Tudor times, the most common system was to be burning wood. This whole great structure with enormous amount of space is designed for cooking with wood. The fire would be just on the floor down there, and this would not have been present. This comes later. We'll come to this later. Imagine the fire in the centre with that nice iron back there. This is for holding the spit. You can see both sides, and here we've got a little spit on it here, but as you can see, it could go in many different places, so that you could move the spit to where you wanted, to change the heat, to change how many things you're cooking at once, where you're cooking, to give you a bit of flexibility when it comes to roasting. So we've got a great big tray underneath to catch all the juices that drip from the meat, all the fat and the gravy.
The gravy.
If we wanted to boil a pot, we'd be using something like this with its little legs. And we could actually stand this down next to the fire at the side on the ground, or we can hang it, whichever works best. The great big space means that I can have more than one fire, or I can change the shape of the fire. If I've got a wooden fire, I don't have to have it just in the middle. I could have a little fire there and another fire there, so that I got a little cool bit for doing perhaps my sauces and another bigger bit for boiling a big pot.
Very inventive.
I can move the fire together. I can spread it out. I can make it very intense in one area and more gentle in another. Having all this space, a fire fork, some tongs, these sorts of things to move it around, just gives me huge flexibility and allows me to cook lots of different things at once. And you'll notice also I've got pottery cooking pots, which work perfectly well on wood. The heat suits them. You just warm them up gently, cool them down gently. They're cheap and they're easy to produce. So this then is the older system. But that is all changing as we begin in the late Tudor period to start bringing coal into our kitchens. It starts in London and other places that are very close to a coal supply. I mean, obviously there's no mines in London. The coal that they were using actually came from Newcastle. They put it, the coal there sort of is right on the cliff faces, down the rivers and even on the sea. So you can sort of take your coal very easily with very simple mining, pop it straight in a boat and just sail it all the way around into London.
To London.
So coal in London came from Newcastle. But, I mean, up in this part of the country, it's a bit more direct, isn't it? You know, anywhere with a coal field of its own, we're beginning to think about the idea of using coal instead of wood. And this is the sort of equipment that they came up with to sort it out. Because if you try and have a coal fire straight on the floor, you're going to have trouble. It ain't going to work very well. You've got to lift it up to get the air all the way around it. Otherwise it just smoulders and you get no heat from it at all. So people start to come up with grates. This is an early one. And you can see that the coal went in this bit here. And then they want some element of the controllability that they used to have with wood. So they put these bits in. These are called cheeks. And you can probably see there's a handle there to wind them in and out. So that I could have a fire that was bigger or a fire that was smaller, according to what I'm cooking. And now the pots have to hang because I can't put them directly on the coal.
This, can you imagine, guys? I mean, for any of our viewers that cook outdoors when camping or do a lot of barbecuing and grilling, this might not seem as foreign, or it might not seem as difficult. But for people that rely very, very heavily on their oven or hobs, as a lot of us do in the UK, this is completely alien. Like the idea of having to control the coals or the wood would just, I would struggle. I would have to take some very intensive lessons from different people about how to use this method of cooking. Oh, I love my oven. This makes me realize how much I love my oven. What a technology.
And you can see that this no longer fits. If I tried to roast by putting my spit along here, if all my coal was in there, wouldn't really work. So everything has to be sort of redesigned in order to work with the coal. It's a major shift, a big investment. And some houses don't do it for another century or more. But the beginnings of a major change are happening here, and it's going to reach out and change the British diet forever. We're going to find that the old wood staples, things like the pottage, have to give way to things more like boiled puddings, spotted dick.
Not a big fan of that. How did they keep food
Now,
fresh?
the Tudors may not have had fridges in their kitchen, but they had no shortage of ways to preserve their food safely. This is a very simple one, but effective. You can see it's a just sort of wooden box, but notice how much ventilation it is. Everywhere you look, up, above and around, it's slatted so that air can move through. You'll also notice that it's suspended on ropes. Now, should some mice or similar problems get into your house, and it happens, doesn't it? This means that they can't get at anything in there overnight because they can't climb up onto the roof and down the ropes and round. The overhangs just make it impossible for them. So this is a rodent-proof safe with loads and loads of airflow so that nothing is going to get damp and therefore mouldy. And it's designed for keeping bread, oatcakes, pies, biscuits, that sort of a thing. The sort of things that do best in an aired environment, things that would go mouldy if they were enclosed, things that a little tiny hints of smoke in the air will help. Don't want too much smoke. We're not trying to smoke the bread, but a little bit there keeps the flies off. And it's up, out of the way of anything else. But there are plenty of other methods for other sorts of food, as we'll see as we move around.
Where do you think they kept their butter?
So obviously this is quite a grand house, but on a much smaller scale, the same processes go on pretty much every home. If you've got meat, you've got to preserve it. So we salt or we smoke. Barrels of salt meat were a staple for many people. And it's not a difficult process. Once you've butchered your carcass, you cut it up into suitable sized pieces. You rub salt all over it. Perhaps mix in a little bit of saltpetre or some bay leaves or maybe even a little bit of spice if you can. And then pack it in a barrel with more salt on top. And in that way you can keep meat, well, quite safely for months at a time. I mean, we all know bacon keeps well, don't we? Now this is a flour ark, and not only does it keep your flour safe from bugs or mice or anything like that, but the thick wood of its construction provides the perfect humidity, the perfect insulation to keep your flour in good condition. On top of that, the lid comes off, turns upside down, and makes the absolute perfect trough for working your dough. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Next time we'll be opening the Tudor wardrobe to discover what fashions were in vogue in the 16th century.
Oh.
Don't forget, you can watch all episodes of my Tudor Life series by downloading the History Extra app.
Ruth has one of these voices that you could just listen to all the time. It never gets old. It's very gentle, very easy pace that she speaks in, and it's just it's quite therapeutic, really. Maybe it's nostalgia. This is what I think of when I think of BBC history documentaries and TV programs. Lovely, wonderful to watch. Thank you for requesting this, Skip. Yes, so I didn't actually realise their diet was as varied as it is. I think we're looking more at the average Tudor person. So it is, you know, generally you're going to be a lower class peasant. Very, very few people make up the nobility, the king's inner circle. So yes, this is your average person. I don't like the word peasant. I hate saying that, but I suppose, yeah. So yeah, very, very interesting. So more varied than I thought in that pottage sounds fancy, doesn't it? That pottage. That's going to change as the seasons go throughout the year. So you've got a variety of different herbs, different meats. I know meat isn't a overly popular thing. You know, they don't have very much of it. Or maybe it's that there's a little bit of meat in most meals, as opposed to like having one meal and it's meat and then you don't see meat again for 2 weeks. Maybe it is that there's small amounts of meat and they cure them or smoke them rather. So yes, very, very interesting there. I thought we were going to have a look at the that magnificent bird pie of Henry VIII, maybe for another time, maybe. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching along with me. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something new, if you're still with me at this point. So take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Much love, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.